So I live in a regular house in Scarborough, like a normal sized house with my immediate family. I'm not sure what age I realized, but my dad, he has a very unique personality. He was very authoritarian. He would yell a lot. Some of the things he would say or do, it was really toxic. Going home in the summertime would make me realize that my family home was a lot more toxic than I understood at the time. So this is gonna sound a little bit fucked up, but I'm fortunate enough that my parents actually pay for my university tuition and living expenses. But I'm at a point now where if they're offering to pay for me and it's better for my mental health and well-being to not be around someone who is like an emotionally abusive person, then I'm okay with them spending their money on me because it's the least they can do at this point.
My mother is very religious, and she was not a fan of my newfound confidence in my sexual orientation. So I came out to her, and for a few months she was trying to gauge how strongly I was committed to being queer. And when she realized that I wasn't going to change my viewpoints or my identity, she put her foot down and said, well, that I had to abide by her rules or leave. When I came home that afternoon, all my stuff was gone, and she told me if I wanted any of it back, I had to go.
Yeah, this happens a lot. A person who is queer or trans has to leave their home. How was it for you to move to Toronto?
Moving to Toronto, I was very naive about the housing situation. I thought, oh, I'm going to school, I'll get OSAP, I'll be able to get a place to live, have lots of money, I'll have it all. I realized very quickly that I was not going to get an apartment in Toronto at all anytime soon. So I made friends quickly. I made friends on Grindr, and I couch surfed for 7 months.
What was that experience like?
There was always an element of risk and danger. I was always living at the mercy of someone else. They were letting me sleep on their bed, on their couch, on their floor, and I had to cater to their needs or go sleep on the streets. And there were times when I found myself engaging in, let's call it survival sex work, where it's like a trade of services. I get to use your bed, you get to use my body. I think there are a lot of people who are in that gray area of homelessness who are participating in things like that.
So you were homeless during this time?
I wasn't on the streets, but I was homeless, yeah. And there were just a few of those nights. But for the most part, I was lucky. I'm young, and I was able to keep clean clothes. I was able to shower. I'm attractive. And I had a sob story, and I used that sob story, manipulated people when I had to. I'm a smart little cookie. I did what I needed to keep my housing situation, and it worked, and for that, I'm grateful.
What kind of sacrifices have you had to make?
I've had to give things up to pay rent many, many times. I've had to give up food, my phone, like personal hygiene, my body, my energy, school. But I gave it all up to keep my housing situation because that is your starting base. You can't have anything if you don't have that base.
Thank you. Thank you for letting us hear a perspective that we don't really hear from that often. So now moving to our panel, back to our panel. Fabienne, what kind of policy changes should be put in place in order to fight this crisis?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that could be done, right? First of all, a vacancy tax. We also need reforms in respects of tenancy protections. We also need incentive-based construction when it comes to affordable housing, because how could we not want everyone to have a home? How could we not want that?
Yeah.
Well, it's really hard for the government to address the quantity game. they're never going to be able to compete with the huge real estate developers who are only too happy to put up gigantic condo towers.
Recently, Toronto reached the 1,000th homeless person to die in the city since 2001. Okay? There's this concept called housing first, and it's not that revolutionary. The idea that someone who's street involved or homeless can't be a functioning human being, can't be an addition to society because that's so important to produce. Fucking capitalism, we love it.
Okay, let's keep this discussion civil, please.
I think the government needs to make more affordable housing. And for people who has homes, like individual homes, if they have like an empty room, they could probably have a heart. Let people in instead of letting them sleep on the streets or in crowded areas or all that foolishness. But people just need to have a heart.
People cannot have a healthy life if they don't have a place they can call home. Before you put someone in jail, before you put someone in rehab, before you give someone some money to buy groceries, before you put them in a shelter, you first give them a place that they get to call their own.
And it's the people in power that really have the power to change all of this. And so making sure that we do have affordable housing, making sure that rental increases are being kept to a standardized percentage, and making sure that landlords aren't taking advantage of the renters. And yeah, it's just like protecting the vulnerable people of the city.
But people work really hard to be able to afford the houses that they purchase. So why does one have to get it handed to them?
Obviously, this is less of a struggle if you're wealthy, if you already own a house, if your parents can just buy you a house, like that's also a thing. But let's be honest, for the majority of the people, that's not the case. So those are the people that you have to keep in mind.
Well, the housing market is always going up and down. It's cyclical, for one. And two, land is always going up in value because land is tangible.
I'm sorry, but we need to find a way to decommodify housing. Like, to not look at it as an investment and to really preserve the use of housing for living.
But I mean, it's also the person's responsibility. Yeah, the government can help you a little bit, but if you don't go out, don't get a job, you're not going to find an apartment and you're not going to find a place to live.
And I don't necessarily think that they're going to make housing in Toronto more affordable because it's like the wealthier people and governments would just tell you to live somewhere else.
Systemic oppression. That's what it sounds like to me. Toronto is increasingly being built for a certain type of person, and that's the kind of person who's got money.
I think we have to fight to find the social movements to really fight for housing as a right. And, you know, to make it more affordable for everyone and to push policy away from housing as an investment. Otherwise, we're just going to kill our city. You're not going to see the same kind of vibrancy and diversity and fairness.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, universal basic income could cure a lot of this problem. It would dollars to donuts be cheaper than all these hoops everybody keeps jumping through. We're in a rich society. It's disgusting. The wealth disparity is clearly here. There are ways to fix it, right?
Can we form solidarity with the tenants movements and the young people who have way too much debt and who are in the gig economy? If those people can form solidarity with the even more marginalized and the even more vulnerable, then we have a really powerful movement on our hands. Okay, but everybody knows it costs a lot of money to live in Toronto. So if you can't afford it, you have to live somewhere else. But there's also things like rent control and regulating landlords so they can't evict people.
Rent control is, I think, the biggest, right? The biggest. Rent control should be applicable to every single unit being used for housing material.
Well, in terms of the government, we all know the problem with rent control. Like, I'm sure you've researched that to death, so I'm not going to lecture you about the problems with rent control. But it's really hard for the government to address this issue because you can't put a cap on prices, otherwise you're going to create so many economic pathologies. And you can't limit where people live. Like, people really want to live in or near Toronto.
But But you know what? An honest fiscal conservative would say that it costs less in the long run than rolling back out of spite and having nothing going forward. Letting people die in the streets, letting women be beaten to fucking death in their houses, right? They obviously don't care about LGBTQ communities. They don't care about black people. They don't care about brown people. They don't care about women, refugees, indigenous people. They don't care about us because they don't have any plans to do anything because they don't want to.
I think it's perfectly valid for the government to condition property construction under the achievement of social goals.
Yeah.
They absolutely have the money. They have the means. They have the expertise because they control the government. They promulgate the laws. It'd be easy as pie to enact all of it. Universal basic income, vacancy tax, domestic violence enhancement protections, right? We know what laws work. We need them funded. We need them legally enabled. We know what to do.
Okay, I think that concludes this part of the evening. Well, thank you to the panel. Thank you, Ian, Fabienne. She's not coming back. And thank you, Emma. Okay, thank you. And thank you to you guys who have shared your stories. We really appreciate it. I think it's important to hear everyone's perspective on this situation. Thank you for you guys coming. Thank you to our tech people. Important. Thank you for that video. Oh, Emma, you brought an instrument, I see. Oh, what a lovely tune. Is this a song? Oh, you have a song.
Sounds of water running fast, hushing the crying of the past. Toronto at our feet, and all of those that we greet. It's unknown history of all the treaties we have breached. To the daughters that we preach, of the slaughter that has seeped into the water that we drink. It's really got to make you think.
Thank you. Wow. Round of applause for that song. So now it is that time of our evening, where our second part of the night, where we will be going to the Glendon Theatre for our other half of the evening, where you guys will be split up into smaller groups and explore the different stories of the housing crisis.